I'm here to show you the class of BAG, and the program is BAG and the subject is BHIC, which is connected to history. BHIC 131. Today we will cover in this class Unit 3 of BHIC 131. Unit 3, which is Indian history, its physical features, its formations, and its characteristics. We will cover the contents in this class, which are the introduction, physical geography, history, basic physiographical divisions of India, regional physical features, dynamics of regional transformation, and so on. The objectives which we will cover in this class, that the relationship between environment, geography, history, uneven pattern of historical growth in the Indian subcontinent, and so on. Yes, we will going to start about introduction of physical features of India. Physical features of India, as you see, history without geography is largely incomplete and devoid of its vital substance, for its loose focus in absence of the concept of the space. That is why history is regarded both as the history of mankind, history of environment. It is difficult to separate the two, the history of mankind and the history of environment. The history of humans and the history of environment mutually influence one another, like soil, rainfall, vegetation, climate, environment, exercise considerable influence on evolution of human culture. Next, the Indian subcontinent is constituted by a number of regions, and each region has some special characteristics of its own. In the course of historical evolution of the country, the regions came to acquire special cultural features in many ways, in the sense of shared historical tradition, language, social organization, art forms, etc. It is possible to recognize the differences between one region and another. In Indian history, therefore, there have been dual process of evolution of common social and cultural norms and institutions, as well as consolidation of the structures of recognizable ranks regions. Next, we will cover environment and human settlement because they both are connected with each other. Environment and human settlements. The relationship between physical geography, human settlements, settlement patterns is yet another important theme which deserves attention. For example, the Sindh region today is relatively warm and dry because of very low rainfall. However, we know that the Harappan civilization flourished over large parts of same region in the past. They both are at the same time and near about the same places. Some scholars opine that the region in the past had wetter climate with possibly higher rainfall, and this enabled the civilization to give itself a high standard of living. And on the other hand, one is struck by the success of Magadhan Empire and by the kind of political ascendancy it's achieved. We can say what? We can say that it is a product of convergence of a number of factors. Just like factors are those like highly fertile soil, sufficient rainfall ensuring a rich annual paddy crop, proximity to iron ore mines, and rivers provided by comfortable communication and trade, and the closeness and continuity of settlements, facilitated in no small way by these natural advantages. These are the advantages of Magadhan Empire, which it had got to be the successful empire. These all the are the reason at that time. A combination of these factors, a combination of these factors helped the comfortable conquest of northern Gangetic Plain. In fact, due to these reasons, the Indo-Gangetic plains were way ahead of other regions in terms of agricultural productivity and the population base. Because the river plains are those plains where the population want to live at that place because of the agriculture, because of the fertility of the soil. Yes, that is the main reason. With the political ascendancy of Magda, we are talking about Magda, and the capital of Magda is a Patliputra. Magda, its capital Patliputra, became the capital of northern India and continued to remain the imperial capital for many centuries. Geographical reasons have been put forward to explain both the rise and fall of Patliputra. While in its early history surrounding rivers like Ganga, Son, Gandak provided for natural defense and easy trade and transport. By the middle of first millennium CE, they had become positive liabilities owing to perennial floods. It is known that the Gupta and post-Gupta period was characterized by decline of trade, decay of towns. With decline of North Indian trade and commerce in the Gupta and post-Gupta periods, the curtailed human movements and shifting away of the course of Ganga, the usefulness of rivers was reduced. Next, we will discuss about arguing against geographical determinism. At this point, it is important to remember that it is one thing to view the international relationship between physical features, unfolding of historical process in a region, but it is an entirely different matter to perceive history in terms of geographical determinism. It has been argued that nature determines the route of development, while man determines the rate and the state. Determined the route of development, while man determines the rate and the state. That is the difference between a nature and the human being. Thus, neither is the influence of nature fixed nor is the man environment relationship static. The limits set by nature are conquered by human experience and by human being with their tools. This is an ongoing process which continuously enriches the realm of human experience and expands the frontier of man's control over environment. For example, hunter-gatherers prefer to live on the edge of forest, while incipient farmers had to come down to riverine plains. That is the main difference between the farmers and the tribal people, hunter-gatherers. Here again, the early farmers, in absence of iron plowshare, preferred to restrict themselves to lighter soils to the west of the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Next, we will study about the basic physiographical divisions of India. Let us now define physical features of subcontinent, characteristics of regions created by them. The basic physiographic divisions are three. 1. Himalayan uplands, 2. Indo-Gangetic plains, and 3. Peninsular India. Each one of these can be further subdivided. The Himalayas are considered to be still rising. Large quantities of alluvium are continuously carried down into the plains from these mountains owing to weathering and erosion. Alluvial plains of northern India extend in the form of an arc for about 3,200 kilometers. Indus plains threw up first civilization to the subcontinent, while Ganga plains have sustained and nurtured city life, state, society, imperial fabrics from the first millennium BCE. Next, northern plains and peninsula are separated by a large intermediate zone, which, in the absence of better terminology, may be called Central India. extended from Gujarat to western Odisha over stretch of about 1600 kilometers. The Aravalli Hills in Rajasthan separate Indus Plain from the peninsula. The intermediate zone is characterized by presence of Vindhyan and Satpura ranges and the Chola Nagpur plateau covering portions of Bihar, Bengal, Odisha. It can be divided into four sub-regions: land of Rajputs between Udaipur and Jaipur, Malwa plateau around Ujjain, Vidarbha of sub-region around Nagpur, Chhattisgarh, plains in eastern Madhya Pradesh, which bore the name Dakshina Koshala in the ancient period. Although generally speaking, communication and movement across the intermediate zone were never easy, there have been contacts between these four apparently isolated pockets and between this region and the other physiographic divisions. On southern edge of intermediate zone or central India begins the formation called the peninsular India. Rocky formation gently slopes from west to east. Four major rivers, just like Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, flow into Bay of Bengal. Narmada, Tapti, however, have a westward flow and run into Arabian Sea in Gujarat after traversing a long distance in the hilly central India. The well-known feature of region is the Deccan Plateau, as you all have listened about that, which extend from Vindhyas in the north to southern limits of Karnataka. The black soil in Maharashtra and in adjoining part of central India is especially rich for its remains moisture and it's considered to be self-plugging, and the soil yields good crops of cotton, millets, peanuts, and oilseeds. Now we will study about the regional physical features. First of all, the Himalayan uplands and western frontier. We will start. Himalayan mountains can be divided into three zones, three units, each having their own specific characteristics, just like eastern, western, and central. The eastern mountains run to the east of Brahmaputra, extended from Assam to South China. Although routes through the eastern mountains are difficult, that has not prevented the flow of cultural influences from Southeast Asia and South China in prehistoric and historic times. Next, the narrow Hindu Kush range extend southward westwards from the Himalayan deep into Afghanistan, covering ancient Gandhar, the Khyber and other passes and Kabul River link it with the Indus Plains. Next, the desert condition. The desert conditions of southwestern Afghanistan are noticed in a more intense form as one enters Balochistan. Pastoralism has been a more profitable, adaptable strategy in the region since Neolithic times. We have studied about three periods: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. Here we are studying near about Neolithic times. The coast of Balochistan, called the Makran coast, is harsh and inhospitable for human settlements. When Alexander, on his way back to Babylon from his Indian campaigns, led a section of his army across the Makran coast, he suffered heavy loss of his men because of paucity of food, paucity of water. They have no water, they have lack of food. The region has been some kind of a nodal point for routes to Central Asia, China on one hand, and Persia and further west on other hand. Next, we will study about Indus Plains. You have listened about Indus Valley civilization. You have listened about Indus River. The passes lead to the rich plains of Indus, which can be divided into two regions, Punjab and Sindh. Punjab, divided between India and Pakistan at that time, literally means the land of five rivers. These five tributaries of Indus flowing across a vast alluvial plain have made the region of breadbasket of the subcontinent. Punjab has been a meeting place and melting pot of culture. The lower Indus Valley and the delta constitutes Sindh. Geographically, it is situated between the Baluchistan hills on the northwest and Thar Desert on southeast. There is evidence of its historical links with Gujarat. You have listened about Lothal in Gujarat from Indus Valley civilization. It is connected with a historical link with Gujarat. Rainfall in the region is extremely low, but the alluvial soil is very fertile. It produces large quantity of rice and wheat. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro are located in Punjab and Sindh, respectively. Gangetic, northern India. The Ganga basin climatically is more humid than Indus region and annual rainfall starting with 50 centimeters. In the Indo-Gangetic, divide steadily rises to 200 centimeters by the time it reaches Bengal, 50 to 200. The Ganga plains can be divided into three subregions: upper, middle, and lower. Upper plains in western and central UP largely include the Dua. There is increasing evidence of extension of Harappan culture into this zone. Upper and middle Ganga plains are defined geographically defined by Himalayas on the north and central Indian hills on the south. Middle portion of plains corresponds roughly to the present day state of Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh. The lower plains are coterminous with the province of Bengal. The wide plains of Bengal are formed by alluvium brought by Ganga and Brahmaputra. You have listened about the two rivers that is very famous for all of us, Ganga and Brahmaputra. High rainfall in low-lying plains created forest and marshy conditions, which made early settlements in Bengal a difficult proposition. Just a second. Yes. Next, we will study about Eastern, Western, and Central India. If you see the map of India, then whatever you have seen in eastern side, whatever you have seen in western side and the central India, we will study about these. Central India, as we have noticed earlier, is an entirely different region and does not have a central focal point. It is a hilly region where hills do not rise to any great height, but are broken by steep slopes and intersected by valleys because they all are connected from the north. They normally run in an east-west orientation. However, the Aravalis, listen about Aravali hills. The Aravalis in northwestern part of this physiographic division extend from southwest to northeast. They almost bisect Rajasthan. Rajasthan is a desert state. Southeastern part of the state to the east of Aravalis is part of a sub-region called Malwa. Movement from north to south is impeded by the Vindhya and Satpura ranges and by Narmada and Tapti rivers. The central Indian belt, especially southern Bihar, western Odisha, and eastern Madhya Pradesh, has been an area of tribal concentration. Gujarat. Gujarat is situated on western fringe of the central Indian belt. It consists of three natural divisions: Saurashtra, Anarta, and Lata. Next, although it appears to have been a zone of isolation, actually it is a region of continuous ancient settlements dating back from the Harappan period. Saurashtra, on account of its geographical closeness to the Indus, experienced an extension of Harappan civilization. It has been a transition zone between Sindh and lands farther west and western India. The plain here is enriched by alluvium brought from central Indian hills by the Narmada, Tapti, Sabarmati, and Mahi rivers. Because of its protected position and lengthy coastline, Gujarat has been the focus of coastal and external trade for more than 4,000 years. Okay, next we'll be studying about peninsular India, Deccan Plateau, and the surrounding coastal plains define the contours of peninsular India. Coastal plains in the east and extreme south are broad, while those in the west are narrow. They are at their narrowest between Bombay and Palghat. The plateau is divided into three major regions, which largely correspond to the states of Maharashtra, the state of Andhra, and the Karnataka. Maharashtra, in addition to other areas, includes northern Deccan Plateau. Cultural influences have been diffused to south from Deccan, and this must have been possible because the Bering and the Western Ghats there are no other dense forest there. Among the four South Indian states, Andhra is the largest. It includes a number of sub-regions like rich coastal plains, Rayalaseema, etc. Northwestern part of Deccan Plateau, as already mentioned, is called Telangana, which is now a separated state. The reddish soils are not rich, and the main crops are millets, pulses, and oilseeds. The extreme south, Deccan Plateau fragments into isolated blocks like Nilgiri, Cardamom Hills in extreme south. They roughly divide western and eastern coastal plains. The wide eastern coastal plain in south and its adjoining hinterland constitute Tamil Nadu. The littoral districts produce an abundance of rice. The Kaveri Plain and its delta constitute its epicenter. Rivers in the region being seasonal, the peasants and the region have relied on tank irrigation since Pallava Chola times in 4th, 3rd centuries. The unirrigated pockets produce millets, pulses, oilseeds. Interestingly, these ecological variations, which supported alternative, at times interrelated ways of life, are attested to in the earliest literature of the land. The Sangam literature, geographically, linguistically, culturally, the region has evolved an individuality of its own. The western coastal plain too broadens in extreme south and corresponds to the region known as Malabar or the present state of Kerala. In addition to rice and other crops, Kerala produces pepper, spices which have been traded with the West since post-modern times. From Tamil Nadu, the littoral is accessible through Palghat Gap and southern end of Western Ghats. Next, we will study about the dynamics of regional transformation. Differences between regions and regional cultures go back in time and can possibly be dated in the beginnings of adaptive subsistence strategies, just like food production, beginnings of agriculture, and agrarian economy in main river basins of the subcontinent being essentially a process and not an event were spread over several millennia while Mehergarh in Kutch Plain, now in Pakistan, experienced early agricultural activities before c. 6000 BCE, and in this region experienced it in 4th to 3rd millennium. Gangetic Valley saw the advent of agriculture in Koldiva, UP, in c. 5000 BCE, in Chiran, Bihar, in second half of 3rd millennium BCE, etc. Next, we will study about uneven patterns of emergence of historical regions. Uneven patterns. of historical regions. Uneven pattern of cultural growth and differential configuration of historical forces in numerous regions were, as we have seen, greatly influenced by geography. The uneven development of regions can be demonstrated through interesting historical situations. For example, in second half of 3rd millennium BCE, one encounters Mesolithic culture in Gujarat. At the same time, Neolithic cattle keepers were traversing the landscape of Deccan. Same in Gujarat and same thing in Deccan. What is striking is that mature, advanced Harappan civilization coexisted with these cultures in other regions. Consequently, there is evidence of interaction between cultures and regions at different level of growth. Such tendencies have persisted at all through Indian history. To put it differently, while Indus and Saravasti basins were colonized in 3rd millennium BCE, the first large-scale agricultural communities in Deccan, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Gujarat belong essentially to Iron Age and can be replaced in second half of the first millennium BC. Next, we will study about the ceramic evidence. Pottery, because of its undestructible quality, is a reliable identifying mark of a culture. Important archaeological source. What? Pottery. Different cultures are identified by their characteristic pottery. Ochre colored pottery ware, OCPW, is dated earlier than c. 1000 BCE. Painted grey ware is roughly dated between c. 800 to 400 BCE. Black and red ware, black polished ware. Okay. Three pottery types are largely found in Indo-Gangetic Divide. Upper Ganga Valley, including the Doab and DPW, has its center of origin in Middle Gangetic Plain and spread out into central India and Deccan during modern period. We study in our history about NBPW more. The literary evidence, that were the archaeological evidences, and now we are going to study literary evidence. The early Indian literature also provides evidence regarding geographical zones, their expansion. The geographical focus of Rig Vedic period was the Sapta Sindhu, land of Indus and its tributaries. Sapta Sindhu, an Indo-Gangetic divide. In later Vedic period, the Doab became epicenter, and in the age of Buddha, around 600 BCE, Middle Gangetic Valley, Koshala, and Magadha came into prominence. It may be mentioned that the stages of geographical spread coincided with process in material culture. The term Rashtra, in the sense of territory, came into use in later Vedic period, and we see rise of small monarchies and states in areas such as Kuru, such as Panchala. In the age of Buddha, 16 Mahajanpadas were emerged at that time, with the exception of Gandhara in northwest, Avanti in Malwa, Ashmaka in Deccan. The Mahajanpadas were mostly concentrated in upper and middle Gangetic Valley, just like Kalinga, just like Andhra, Vanga, Rajasthan, Gujarat find no mention in literature of that period, suggesting thereby that they were yet to emerge on the historical stage. Next is force of regions in Indian history. Force of regions. Village has been the basic socially organized unit in all regions, securing subsistence for its inhabitants, supporting urban life, state structures, and so on. However, some regions exhibit a greater density of population. Rural settlements Urban centers have regularly given rise to strong, expensive states. By contrast, other regions do not share these traits. The difference between regions may be explained in terms of its geography, its manner and period of spread of material culture, overall configuration of historical forces such as population, such as technology, social organization, communications, etc. A combination of these factors helped in shaping and development of personality of regions, owing to the development of distinct and strong regional personalities and strength of regional forces. The Indian subcontinent was never completely politically united. Some regions, owing to their inner strength, tried to expand and attain pan-Indian or super-regional status, but such experiments were not entirely unqualified success stories. The Mauryas, Tughlaqs, Mughals, British provide a semblance of political unity. It must be noted that none of them succeeded in imposing political unity in all geographic units and cultural areas, though the British came very close to it. Next, we will study about the notion of Chakravartin. Chakravartin, we use the word for the emperors, which was very important idol of in ancient Indian political history. Sheds further light on the problem under discussion. The ideal Chakravartin was supposed to become an universal conqueror and achieve universal dominance. The realm of such a king is equated by Kautilya's Arthashastra with the region between Himalayas and the sea. However, neither Kautilya nor his successors describe how a pan-Indian empire was to be administered. What seems possible is that Chakravartin ideal meant subordination of rivals, extension of authority over their territories, and thereby expansion of the empire. This does not mean that the subjugated territories always became a part of a uniform administrative system or that a strict control was exercised over them. In other words, it meant the exercise of a superior political power, which had nothing to do with such aspects as administrative regulation, administrative management, and organization. Next, we will study about the hierarchy of regions. Hierarchy of the regions. The term region, like the word country, is a broad inclusive term. In the present context, its meaning has to be clearly specified. Geographers and social scientists have defined and delineated the regions differently, keeping in view the requirements of their investigation. We have thus such expressions as linguistic regions, caste regions, physical regions, natural regions, cultural regions, etc. However, there need not be any uniformity between two adjoining regions. Even in the geographically proximate regions, as we have seen above, diverse form of culture coexisted throughout history. The patterns of historical development in the country and the regional unevenness of transition to the historical stage suggest the existence of a hierarchy of the regions. Major geographical influences. What influence about that the geography of that particular country? The major structured lines of Indian historical geography or important geographical features of Indian history such as Narmada to Chota Nagpur line or the line running from Gulf of Cambay to Mathura constituted by Aravallis have considerably influenced the pattern of cultural diffusion in the subcontinent. We have four great divisions, just like Indus Plains, Gangetic Plains, Central Indian, intermediate zone, and peninsular India. To the north and the west of Harawari lines, the overall cultural landscape appears to be different. Only some areas of Rajasthan and Gujarat respond to the mainstream of cultural development of Gangetic Valley in the early historical period. The difference is somewhat clear in the case of Punjab. After Rigvedic period, there seems to have been an arrested growth in the Punjab. Yes. Next, the pre-existence of numerical Janpadas in the region till the Gupta period suggests autonomous development. It is also indicates weak property of land, poor agricultural growth, absence of land grant, inscriptions, a feature common in Gupta, post-Gupta times, in rest of the country. Next, nuclear regions. We will study about nuclear regions. In Indian history, we see the early emergence of some regions as perennial bases of power. In such regions, we observe an uninterrupted succession of powerful kingdoms. In contrast, there were other less favored regions too. Geographers, historians thus speak in terms of perennial nuclear regions, areas of relative isolation, areas of isolation. Next is settlement structure in time and the space. Settlement structure of regions did not remain static. They comprised villages, hamlets, towns, cities. Some regions like Middle Ganga Plain and Deccan were endowed with a greater number of towns. As we proceed to post-Gupta period, the urban centers die out. There is an increasing evidence of agrarian expansion and emergence of new rural settlements. In some cases, the earlier tribal hamlets were transformed into present villages. There were differences between the Brahmana and non Brahmana settlements at the level of economic activity and social stratification. Next is formation of some regions in early India. You have listened about the early India? Yes. Ganga, Yamuna Doab, Middle Ganga Valley, Malwa, Northern Deccan, Andhra, Kalinga, Tamil Plains are major perennial nuclear regions which emerged quite early as bases of power. But there have been smaller areas as well which have preserved their individuality. Konkan, Kannada, and Chhattisgarh fall in this category. Some areas such as Raichur Doab between Krishna and Tungabhadra and Vengi between Godavari and Krishna have been continuously fought over their agricultural resource potential which could add immensely to strength of adjoining areas. Next is Ganga Basin, Gangetic Basin. Ganga Plain, by virtue of its high agriculture productivity, rich population base, has enjoyed a dominant position in Indian subcontinent. No other region has had a comparable power base. However, the entire plain, as mentioned earlier, is not a homogeneous geographical piece. We have already seen that Middle Ganga plains, for a variety of reasons, emerged more successful than the upper and lower plains, and by the time of Mauryas had attained undisputed hegemony in the subcontinent. During the Rigvedic period, the center for this was Indo-Gangetic divide. In the later Vedic period, around 1000 BCE, the geographical focus shifted to Ganga Yamuna Doab. With it, the eastward movement of Vedic period had begun. Next is the Tamil country. Anthologies of early Tamil poems, collectively known as Sangam literature. We have studied about Sangam literature in our first class, Literary sources. Sangam literature provide a vivid account of transition to a state society in ancient Tamil country from an earlier tribal pastoral stage. They indicate simultaneous existence of different ecological regions and suggest how different but interrelated life ways ranging from food gathering, marginal agriculture, fishing, and cattle tending to intensive agriculture coexisted. The process of state formation was accelerated by what? Number one, Roman trade in early centuries of the Common Era, rise of towns, penetration of northern Sanskritic culture along with the Brahmanas. Next, we will study about the Deccan, Andhra, and Maharashtra. In Andhra and northern Deccan, the iron using megalithic communities, which followed the Neolithic Chalcolithic cultures, provided base for settled agriculture and helped in the transformation of these regions. High yielding paddy cultivation was restored too in the occupied coastal tracts of Andhra during 5th to 3rd century BCE. Megalith burials have produced evidence of rudimentary exchange network which transported mineral resources to northern Deccan or status differentiation, etc. Next, we will study about Kalinga. Listen about Kalinga. Kalinga with Ashoka Empire. Kalinga with Mauryan Empire. Connected with Ashoka. The land of Odisha, like Deccan, experienced significant changes from around 4th to 3rd century BCE. Between C 300 BCE and C 300 CE, the history of Odisha is one of the internal transformations of tribal society. The transition was partly autonomous and partly stipulated by contract with Sanskritic culture of Gangetic plains, the beginning of which can be traced back to the times of Nandas and Mauryas. The subsequent period, like 4th to 9th centuries, experienced emergence of a series of sub-regional states in different pockets of the region. Next, we will study about the Northwest. It must be clear that very little has been said so far about Sindh, Balochistan in Northwest. This is mainly because of their peripheral location. For much of early historical period, they were cut off from the mainstream of cultural development by the Great Indian Desert. This is not to argue that the area was culturally barren. In our period of study, wherever anything of consequence happened, there it was mostly in relation to Central Asia, Afghanistan, and Persia. Next, we will study about that. We were talking about Asia. We were talking about Central Asia, Afghanistan, Persia. It was connected from the north. It was only from the Kushana period that these areas formed a part of a supra-regional political system, which included a major part of northern India. However, in northwest, the Gandhara region was an exception. Next, we will start to know about what we have read, what we have studied in this class, and that is summary. In summary, we will study about that what we have discussed in earlier in this class. Physical divisions in the subcontinent are often roughly coterminous with linguistic regions. The latter, in turn, have developed and asserted their cultural identities. People of different physical divisions have varied taste, food habits, and dress sense. This is derived from environmental setting, mode of life, manner of resource, utilization that has evolved within their frontiers, uneven pattern of growth, both between and within macro regions. Macro regions may be explained with reference to the availability or non-availability of resource, potentialities and form of human and technological intervention. Major river basins of the country which have an annual rainfall between 50 and 100 centimeters and are capable of sustaining agriculture communities on a large scale have been fully colonized through the ages. Areas with lesser and greater rainfall suffer from problems of aridity. Areas where the land was arid and thick jungle vegetation, respectively, and are not best suited for agriculture. The land where the fertility is not available, that is not suited for the agriculture, arid zone, arid area, thick jungle vegetation, that is not suited for the agriculture. There is a striking correlation between the optimal rainfall zone and the areas cleared for cultivation in the subcontinent. The unfolding of historical process, therefore, has neither been even nor uniform all over. Himalayas in the north and ocean in the south, southwest, and southeast create a superficial view of isolation of the subcontinent. Cultural influences have been exchanged across these frontiers, and there have been maritime contacts with West Asia, maritime contacts with Southeast Asia. Internally, even the rugged, difficult terrain of central India has not really impeded the movement of ideas and influences between varied regions of country. Admittedly, geography and environment influence historical developments considerably, even if they do not determine it entirely. The end of this class is there. Now we are going to start one thing more which we have studied a lot of, which we have to concentrate about that. If we are going to study about the history of the India, if we are going to study about the history, then without the geography and without the geographical region, history is nothing. If we are going to study about the geography, then we will see the directions of India, directions: east direction, west direction, north and west. There are so many other things which we connected, which the connection of the India with the geographical regions, just like the geographical regions, just like where the rainfall is much more than the other areas, like 50 centimeters and the 100 centimeters. There is a big difference between these two areas. Yes, in peninsular India, we have not studied about one thing, the cultural influence. And if we are going to start, if we are studying about an area, then the area is connected with how much culture is connected with that area. Cultural influence have been diffused to south from Deccan, and this must have been possible because bearing the Western Ghats, there are no other dense forests there. Maharashtra, we have studied about Maharashtra, seems to have a natural boundary, and Andhra, for the boundary line coincides with the distribution of fertile black soil. Across the boundary, one encounters red soil of Telangana, which fails to retain moisture. Therefore, Telangana has become a land of tanks and other forms of artificial irrigation. And we have studied about Mahanadi. They are centered largely on Mahanadi Delta, though there are some other rivers too adjoining of Bay of Bengal on same littoral. Western Odisha is an extension of central Indian hills and as mentioned earlier in the context of Chhattisgarh plain, it shares some of the same features. Thus, there are two physiographic divisions of Odisha exhibiting uneven patterns of growth. The fertile coastal plain with a richer agrarian base has provided a focal point and has been the center of socio-cultural development. Odisha began to develop her linguistic and cultural identity late in the first millennium CE. We have studied about Saurashtra. We have studied about Anarta. And what about Lata, southern Gujarat, northern Gujarat. Semi-arid wind blow soils, characteristics, Anarta, and fertile area on western coast constitutes Lata. The central peninsula of Gujarat is called Kathiawar. The low-lying run of Kutch is another feature which during the monsoons turns into a swamp. In spite of these physical subdivisions, Gujarat has a cultural identity and unity because it is broadly bounded by Vindhyas and broadly bounded by Western Ghats in the east and by the desert in the north. Yes, we have studied about one more thing about Madhya Pradesh, the central Indian belt, especially southern Bihar, western Odisha, and eastern Madhya Pradesh, has been an area of tribal concentration. Nevertheless, it has also been a zone of slow, steady penetration. Cultural influences from adjoining regions have been influenced and integrated tribals into the dominant caste peasant based on Indian society from early historic times and more so from the period. Central India, we have studied about Central India, north, south, northeast, and northwest. Central India, we have noticed earlier, in an entirely different region and does not have central focal point. It is a hilly region where hills do not rise to any great height but are broken by steep slopes intersected by valleys. They normally run in an east west orientation. The anomalies in northwestern part of this physiographic division extend from southwest to northeast. They almost bisect Rajasthan, the desert state. Southeastern part of the state of the east of Aravallis is a part of a sub-region called Malwa. Because of the fertility of soil, it yields good crops, even in absence of irrigation also. Chalcolithic settlements are distributed in good numbers here. Urban culture spread into this region from the middle plains relatively late. Given the kind of environment, the ponds in Bengal have been an observable feature from ancient times, and fish has become staple diet of all sections of people in upper and middle Ganga plains. Upper plains of western and central Uttar Pradesh largely include the Doab. Doab is the area which is connected with the rivers, and the land of the Doab area is really very fertile. And because of the fertility of the soil, because of the fertility of the land, the agriculture is in very best condition. This has been an area of conflict and cultural synthesis. Doab is an area where the two rulers always fight, always they have conflict, always they have cultural synthesis just to grab the Doab area. There is increasing evidence of extension of Harappan culture into this zone. It was also the center of painted greyware culture, PGW culture, and pulsated activity in the later Vedic period. Vedic period, which is divided into two parts, early Vedic period and later Vedic period. Early Vedic period, which is connected from 1500 to 1000 BCE, and later Vedic period, which is connected to 1000 BCE to 500 BCE. Yes, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. These were the two major cities which are located in Punjab and Sindh. They both are very developed cities at that time in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley Civilization period time. Indus Plains, we have studied about Indus Plains, which are connected with Punjab and literally means the land of five rivers, which is connected to Punjab. These five tributaries of Indus flowing across a vast alluvial plain will have made the region the bread basket of subcontinent. The eastern part of these plains merge into the Ganga basin. Punjab has been a meeting place and the melting pot of the cultures. Pre-existing and intrusive elements of cultures have fused here. Strategic location. Prosperity of Punjab has always invited invaders because the invaders came there to trade something from their country. Central India, we have studied about this. Saurashtra, Anarta, Lata, we have studied about these three areas, major divisions of Central Indian belt. We have studied a lot of about Gujarat. We have studied about a lot of about Central Indian hills, Narmada River, Tapti River, Sabarmati River, and Mahi River. Because of its protected position and the lengthy coastline, Gujarat has been the focus of coastal and external trade for more than 4,000 years. To the southwest of delta of Ganga, at the eastern end of the hills of central India, are coastal plains of Odisha. They are centered largely on Mahanadi Delta. Through there are some other rivers too, joining the Bay of Bengal on the same littoral. Western Odisha is an extension of the central Indian hills and, as mentioned earlier, in the context of Chhattisgarh plain, it shares some of same features. Thus, there are two physiographic divisions in Odisha exhibiting uneven pattern of growth. The fertile coast plain with a richer agrarian base has provided a focal point and has been the center of social cultural development. Odisha began to develop her linguistic and cultural identity late in the first millennium BCE. We have studied about Odisha, we have studied about peninsular India, and we have studied about Indian state like Andhra. Andhra is the largest. And next, we have studied about the south also. We have studied about the dynamics of regional transformation, like Mehergarh, like Meluha. We all things we have studied about. Now, now we are going to end. Sorry, going to end this session. Okay, thank you.